This is Radio Ukraine International with the weekly program Doing Business, hosted by Rodion Zhiznyevsky and produced by Konstantin Lavrentyuk. Doing Business covers current economic developments in and concerning Ukraine and gives topical information as well as immediate and longer-term economic forecasts. It is what we think might give you food for thought and help you see Ukraine through the economic angle. In the previous edition, we talked about the life of Ukrainian programmers who live and work in Japan. As a kind of relay, this edition features a Japanese entrepreneur living and working in Ukraine. His name is Hiroshi Shibata, and he is the founder and chief executive officer of the Japanese companies Agora IT Consulting, EE Technologies, and DotGlobal. Mr. Shibata is 42 years old. He was born in the city of Toyohashi. He has a degree in economy, computer science, and MBA, and has been studying and teaching IT for 22 years. He has worked in the United States, Germany, and Poland. In 2019, Mr. Shibata came to Ukraine, and since then, Agora IT Consulting has been providing services to Japanese companies that wish to hire local engineers here in Ukraine. Its clients are companies that produce intelligence and blockchain. Mr. Shibata kindly agreed to answer my questions. Hiroshi-san, a couple of years ago, soon after you came to Ukraine, you said, being in Ukraine in 2019 is like being in California in 1848. You can find a gold mine called talents. So let me ask you, has Hiroshi Shibata found his gold mine in Ukraine, or is he still prospecting?
It's exactly, now is the time for Ukraine to shine, I think. I've found some gold here already, yes. That gold is a talent. And Ukraine is, in fact, one of the most underrated countries in the world, in my opinion. So that's because, Ukraine has been known as a birthplace of great scientists like Igor Sikorsky, the inventor of helicopter, and Sergei Korolev. He's a father of, Soviet rocket space exploration. And it has been known amongst certain people, but not the Ukraine is known as such a technological hub of the world in Eastern Europe. In fact, it is. And, I find a lot of great engineers, specifically in the area of information technologies. So, many American or Western European companies, they know it, and they have a development centers in Ukraine. I can name all companies. The big ones are like Snapchat and Wix, and TransferWise. A lot of companies, they have development centers here in Ukraine. Ukraine has great startups as well, such as Grammarly and Amazon Ring. A lot of other, like People.ai, for example. Recently, there's a company called Reface that creates a deep fake of the person. You can put your own face into motion pictures or commercials, and that's actually mobile app. And that's a Ukrainian company as well. So there are a lot of great talent in IT, but a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people, especially in Japan, they know very little about Ukraine. Before I came and started working as an IT consultant, basically, Ukraine was only known for example, like Chernobyl and conflict with your eastern neighbor and having beautiful girls. That's about it. So actually promoting Ukraine as a tech nation of the world. But a lot of Ukrainian companies, they are actually registered in California or outside of Ukraine, like Estonia or Cyprus, and they advertise themselves as American company or a global company rather than Ukrainian company. So this is one of the reasons.
What do you do here in Ukraine?
I'm an IT consultant and also an IT entrepreneur. And I also write articles on Newsweek Japan, as well as one of the largest tech media in Japan called IT Media. And I manage a local team, development team here in Ukraine. I receive a lot of projects from Japan, mainly software development projects. I'm managing the local team, make hiring, and doing liaison between Ukraine and Japan for any IT-related projects. Japan representative of IT Ukraine Association. Basically, any Japanese companies that come to Ukraine to find talents or to build a team, I help them to coordinate with the local. A lot of companies from Japan, they want to make direct hiring. They want to hire engineers directly. So in that case, I give them like advice and the services to basically help them out to launch the local team here in Ukraine. So, and also, my mission is to promote Japanese market here in Ukraine, because I see a lot of Ukrainian IT companies and engineers, they are only looking at very competitive markets such as, US market, to some extent Western Europe, because I think those markets are huge and Ukrainians have been working with them for many, many years. So I completely understand that they feel comfortable working with them. But I think, considering Japan is the third largest economy in the world after the United States, and now it's China, after that, Japan. So in terms of GDP, the size of GDP. So I have a feeling that Ukrainian companies, engineers should put a little more focus on the market in the Far East, especially Japan. So, and there are a lot of opportunities there. There are a lot of money, investment projects, but they are in short of engineers. A lot of companies in Japan are now struggling to find engineers, which Ukraine has plenty of. So I think Ukraine can help Japanese companies to provide engineers and talent and software development technologies in exchange to the investment and projects that Japan can offer.
How did this idea come about? After all, our countries are separated by such a huge distance, and our cultures and languages are so different.
It all started I've been in Ukraine for about 2 years now. And the first time I came here was back in 2017. And, it was my very first time in Ukraine. I was in Lviv, and it's such a beautiful city. It's an old city. And the second time I visited Ukraine was in Kiev. I was just very much impressed by how beautiful the city is. But at that time, I didn't know much about the IT industry, and its potential here. Since I work as an IT consultant here, I have 10 years of offshore development experience, mainly in investment banking. As I slowly started discovering the startup scene here and IT, regulations and how many great talents that exist in Ukraine, I very quickly find out there's definitely a potential here in Ukraine. And back in 2017, I was still in Poland. I lived in Poland before I relocated myself to Ukraine. Even compared to Poland, it's very ironic because a lot of Ukrainians move to Poland, to immigrate to Poland to get better jobs or opportunities there. But, in my case, I moved from Poland to Ukraine because I see more opportunities here even compared to Poland. And this is why I basically moved, relocated myself from Poland to Ukraine. I think being outside of European Union at this point, it makes Ukraine look far more attractive compared to your Western neighbors, countries like Poland or Czech Republic or Slovakia or Romania. Compared to all those countries combined, Ukraine is less regulated, lower taxes for IT engineers, and Ukraine itself is larger in terms of population. It's, you guys have 40 or 42 million people as compared to Poland. I believe that they have 35 million people. So it is actually a huge country in terms of population and also the land itself. Of course, Russia is the biggest in terms of land, but, excluding Russia, Ukraine is the biggest Eastern European country. So it has a huge potential.
How difficult is it for a Japanese to adapt to our lifestyle and culture?
The first time I was in Lviv, it was only traveling. And the first time I came here, I was just a traveler. In terms of culture shock, it wasn't that much to me because, Ukraine wasn't the first Slavic country I've ever been. I've been to Belarus, Russia, Poland, also a Slavic country. So it has a lot of similarities between, Poland and Ukraine. But some degree of culture shock here, in Ukraine. Even within Ukraine, different cities have different cultures, and different regions, different part of Ukraine has different cultures. Basically, it was very kind of surprising to see that you guys have restored your, infrastructures so quickly, since, the revolution that happened back in 2014. It was only 3 years after the revolution, the first time I came here. But to me, it didn't look like a country that was under attack or, had such a life-changing, revolution to the majority of you guys. I thought it was pretty safe. It's very funny that the people outside of Ukraine think that Ukraine is actually dangerous, because to me, I thought that Ukraine was pretty calm and very safe, peaceful. People are very polite. In the city center, there are some shady people, but it's like in any big cities, in any countries. So it was a positive culture shock that I saw that people were behaving pretty nicely, and also like the city looks beautiful. So I was a bit worried, to be honest, before I came here. A lot of people told me that, it's still very dangerous there, and, you shouldn't travel there. Actually, when I came, I was positively surprised. That's when I fell in love with the country. I've never been to the eastern part of Ukraine, so I can't comment on, the areas like Donbass or Crimea, like the places like that I've never been. Places that I visited, like Kiev and Lviv, Rivne, Dnipro, even Kharkiv, I thought all those places are relatively safe. Lviv, it's a beautiful city. I got the impression that, we have a city called Kyoto. It's an old capital, and there are so many old temples and architecture, like shrines. And then they moved the capital to Tokyo. I thought like Lviv is like equivalent to our Kyoto. So like it's an old city and where a lot of tourists visit, and Lviv was kind of like I thought it was I love the architecture of, from the Hungarian Empire, and it has its own like charm. So it's a very unique city, I think, compared to any other Ukrainian cities.
You're listening to Radio Ukraine's weekly program, Doing Business. From your experience, how many Ukrainians have moved to Japan?
So, in terms of moving from Ukraine to Japan, I would say there's no big movement yet. So there are very few engineers who actually relocate themselves to Japan, because there are a lot of obstacles, a lot of challenges that they need to overcome first. Not only language barrier to understand the culture and things like that, and they need to get a visa and get themselves settled, find an apartment, and it's a lot of work, basically. There are some. Personally, I know some Ukrainian software engineers working in Japan, and I know some companies that help them relocate to Japan. I personally think that this is not a major trend right now, because due to COVID-19, the world is moving more remote. So a lot of people work remote, and the whole world is going remote. Not only Japan or Ukraine, but United States and Europe, everyone's working from home nowadays. This gives the prospect the world is staying that way for a while, I think. Just because the vaccine is distributed and lockdown is lifted, nowadays employees can do the same job at home. They don't need them to be in the office all the time. So I think the relocation is very costly, and it's very difficult, and there's a lot of obstacles that they need to resolve. And I think the most optimal way is the offshore development and the remote team, in my opinion, because relocation it costs money, and it takes a lot of work. That's what I foresee. This trend not going to change for a while. That's what I think, yeah.
What are the main positive differences between life and business in Ukraine and Japan?
Positive differences, in terms of life in general, in Japan, everything's open 24/7. So all the shops, and we have stores, shops, convenience stores. It's 7-Eleven, for example. It is a shop where you can just walk in and get everything you need. So food, or even stationery, or anything like drinks and anything you like. But to here, a lot of shops close probably 10 p.m. or it's you don't really see many shops open all night or 24/7. So that's probably the first thing. Maybe Ukrainians a little more laid back, which is a good thing, because no one wants to work 24/7. No one wants to work take night shift. I think here in Ukraine, I feel that I don't need to go to shop when it's 2 a.m. in the morning. You're supposed to be asleep. And this is actually a very good thing, not only from customers' point of view, but if you think of the shop staff or employees' point of view, I think it gives more comfort to life, work-life balance, or quality of life from a worker's perspective. I think it gives them more comfort. Business-wise, basically, if you do business with Japan, you need to keep in mind that Japanese business culture is very formal. So like everything has to be in a certain manner. And sometimes it's kind of frustrating, but sometimes, they don't want to make mistakes, or they first need to trust you before they start business with you. So here in Ukraine, probably less formal compared to Japan. Maybe it's a US influence or it's more European, but I think there are pros and cons, especially in the IT industry. Things tend to move fairly quickly here because they are used to working with other countries. And the tech industry in the United States, for example, like they're very quick, very fast management decisions and business decisions. But sometimes, you need to be a little careful, who you want to work with and what business partner that you should choose. So I think there are certainly differences, in business, but I can only comment from an IT person perspective. But if you go to other more traditional industry sector, I think there are far more differences. Like if you work in the agricultural sector or metal sector, the business culture might be more traditional here, but in Japan in general, it's business culture is a little more formal and I think more conservative.
What disadvantages do you see here?
I don't want to sound very negative. So because I'm always focusing on the positive side of Ukraine. However, I think, one of the biggest problems that I see here is that, like I mentioned, a lot of Ukrainian tech companies, they pretend to be American, pretend to be something else. I see this very, very often. I don't name the companies. There are a lot of companies that are registered in California or somewhere else. When they advertise it, they never say they are Ukrainian. I think that's related to the national branding, so the image of the country. A lot of Ukrainians have such a strong belief that as soon as they disclose that it's from Ukraine, it just degrades the quality of the reputation or the brand. So this is a kind of misconception. I think Ukrainians should be proud of themselves, and they should, when they promote tech industry here, they should say that upfront that it's Ukrainian. If all companies start doing it, I'm pretty sure that Ukraine can transform themselves, their image, into more positive one. Just like, you have a good example like Estonia, also a former Soviet countries, just like Ukraine. They have successfully transformed them, their image into a digital nation, which is pretty amazing. And like I said, I think Ukraine is the most underrated country in Europe, I think. But Estonia is the opposite. I don't want to say, Estonia is overrated, but their reputation is far greater than what they actually are, in my view. And the Ukrainians Ukraine is opposite. Their image is low, worse than what they actually are. So I think, Ukraine has a potential to learn from what Estonia has achieved, and they can transform their image.
Can you speak Ukrainian? Are you learning it?
Я трохи розмовляю українською мовою. I know a few words like дуже дякую, будь ласка, please, and you say привіт, and дуже гарно. That's a very important word. I actually started learning Russian a few years ago, so I'm actually conversational in Russian. I can speak Russian. I can hold a conversation in Russian. When it comes to Ukrainian language, I only recently started because this is a tough language and I cannot find textbook. This is the language that I struggle to find textbook. So I tell myself that I'm in Ukraine and I should learn Ukrainian language. So it will happen this year, hopefully.
Have you got used to Ukrainian cuisine?
So I love Ukrainian dish. I love borscht. I love salo. Although many foreigners, I love the Ukrainian cuisine because compared to other European countries, where I lived, I used to live in Germany and Poland. Almost all dishes that they have is either meat and potatoes. But Ukrainians actually surprisingly they eat a lot of seafood. So this is what I love about Ukraine. Because in Japan, we eat a lot of seafood as well. And here in Ukraine, sushi is very popular. I see a lot of sushi restaurants, and Ukrainians eat fish all the time. So that's actually very good to me because, I love seafood as well. You can get oyster. You can eat oyster at a lot of restaurants here. I can't find crabs and eel. I wasn't able to find eel or crab in Germany or Poland because surprisingly, they don't eat them. I think in the places like Central Europe, like Germany, Poland, Hungary even, They don't eat seafood so as much as Ukrainians. Yeah, surprisingly, that Ukrainian food is really good to me. I find Ukrainian food very, very tasty. Yeah, so like food culture is like one of the things that keep me here, definitely.
How many friends have you made in this country?
Yeah, I mean, like I made a lot of friends here, actually. Unfortunately, I don't have many Ukrainian friends. I usually hang out with foreign, like non-Ukrainian friends, like Americans or European, but I'm hoping to make more friends, like more Ukrainian friends. I really want to, improve my Ukrainian language. I want to learn more about Ukraine. So to do that, like making friends is the best way. So just find me on Clubhouse or any social media. Just if you're interested in making friends with me, you're all welcome.
So are you in the Clubhouse? It is quite popular here in Ukraine, and we are actively engaged in establishing business and friendly relations between our countries. Will you tell us more about this platform?
Clubhouse, it's a new social media app to allow people to communicate and make friends and also talk to each other purely using voice. So there's no text or there's no video, just voice. It has been very popular in Japan, and I think it's first started from Silicon Valley. It's becoming very popular in America too. And I see a growing number of users here in Ukraine as well. Like there are a lot of Ukrainian rooms on Clubhouse, and they're mainly talking about tech stuff, like a lot of IT and designers. People, they do networking because now it's a little more tough to do networking in real life. On Clubhouse, it allows you to do networking, so like get to know someone that you don't know, but with the same interest. So what I started doing it, I joined Clubhouse back in, I think last month, and I've been pretty active. I'm less active now because it's very addictive, to be honest. I spend too much time on Clubhouse, so that's very dangerous. But me and a friend of mine, he's an American entrepreneur in Kiev. His name is Grady Anderson. He's based in Kiev as well. We started doing a weekly kind of chat room on Clubhouse. So we talk about Ukrainian tech industry and basically, as foreign entrepreneurs, how we do business here in Ukraine and the challenges that we face and how we overcome those issues, things like that. So everyone's welcome, and please come to the Clubhouse. Just get the invitation. You need an invitation to join Clubhouse, so just ask around. And if you have any friend who's already a member of Clubhouse, just ask to send invitation and you can join. And you can follow me on Clubhouse, Hiroshi Shibata. You can search on Clubhouse and you can follow me. So that next time we organize the event, and you can it will pop up on Clubhouse and you can join.
We thank Mr. Hiroshi Shibata, and we are looking forward to welcoming him to our programs. We hope he will tell us more about the latest trends in the IT world and Ukrainian-Japanese ties. Living in Ukraine must be quite challenging to foreigners, especially if they are used to living in a completely different culture with a completely different mentality. Nevertheless, it is an indisputable fact that Ukraine has its own treasure that makes the difference, and it is the Ukrainian people. Our talents achieve high results abroad, winning international recognition in different areas. But Ukraine is still one of the most underrated countries, and this interview has only proved this fact. That was Radio Ukraine's weekly program Doing Business, hosted